Hey, Katerina here again, but today with Betsy Kline.
Hello, honored to be here.
I'm very excited. This is the third podcast of A Curated Life, and Betsy's the one doing it with me because it's being done on the weekend, and Tori is visiting some people this weekend, but Betsy came in town, which is very exciting for me. I love it when she visits.
I love being here. It's a cozy vibe in this house. It's kind of interesting that right now I feel like we have an audience. We will once this is live, but right now
but it's not actually live.
That would be hello,
something.
People.
Hi, and good, happy Sunday morning to you.
I feel like I'm on the Thanksgiving Day parade. That's how elevated my head gets.
That's kind of the viewership that we have for sure. So this is the third episode. This is third week in a row. So this will actually go live tonight, because the intention with this is to have a new one ready by the end of each weekend. So it's something that people could start their week off with. And so far that it's been going well, and I appreciate Betsy coming. She's like, how can I help you? I am 100% pregnant. My due date is in 2 days, with baby number 3.
And the best part is I asked her this morning, knowing what her due date was, the 29th. I'm like, so I just didn't know the date. I'm like, what day is it? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what's the date? She's like, and I'm like, okay, you are doing,
you know it's the
yeah,
third
I'm like,
baby.
You are in 2 days. I would be knowing the date I don't know.
Every day.
I guess you're not nervous though, because you're it's going to happen when it happens.
It doesn't have to happen on the due date. I'm not itchy for it to happen today. I think a lot of people
today, right now,
it could happen.
We have a show for you.
Labor could start right now. I do
3,
think
Katerina goes into birth.
I mean, these things could happen. It's going to happen within the next week, most likely. That's my feeling, but I don't need it to happen today. Honestly, the more time she wants to give me, the better. But logistically, I'm ready. So now I'm okay, it's gonna happen when it happens.
You're gonna have a 3-girl podcast soon.
Yeah,
I love it.
I have a whole girl gang.
She'll be
over
born
here.
right into it.
But today, I was asking Betsy. So Betsy was asking how she could help me this weekend because she's sweet like that, and I was like, actually, I need to do the podcast, and I would love for you to do it with me. So we were talking about I asked her topics.
And I think you picked the hardest one.
I did. I did.
It's funny because when you picked it, I was like, great.
She's like, I was just trying to have a good list for you.
Well, I think the reason it's only hard is because it's something we both push back all the time. So I'm like, now that we have to talk about it.
Yeah. So it's something that both of us struggle with, have struggled with, continue to struggle with. And I'll give my quick synopsis of it, and then you can give yours of what it is.
But this is really exciting.
Feelings, emotions. Actually dealing with your feelings and emotions instead of tucking them down or numbing them or pushing them away or ignoring them. Recognizing emotions, feelings that you're having, and processing it and dealing with it.
Yeah, and I think we're just going to talk about for me, I've experienced unhealthy ways of dealing with feelings, and now I'm learning healthy ways of dealing with them, and just the differences and how much better it is to deal with it healthy, even if it's hard to do that.
It is hard. It's much harder to deal with your feelings.
But it's better long term, and
Yes.
that's what I'm learning. Do the hard thing in the moment. The long-term result will be better. And before I couldn't see that because I was acting on feelings so often.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I think a lot of things in life are like that, where it's the hard thing today is easier tomorrow. But am I willing to suffer right now to make it better later?
I lived a life very long where I was not willing to suffer. And I would walk around saying, I just don't like to do things I don't like to do. And now I'm practicing and I have a mindset of, if I don't do this, I'm not going to be where I want to be. Mm-hmm. And I can actually see that. And before I couldn't. And I know that sounds kind of crazy. Like some of you guys might be like, well, yeah, that's obvious. But I really didn't realize that for a long time. Mm-hmm. I would kind of go through the day being like, well, if I don't feel good and I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And I would act on that verse thinking, okay, I don't feel good. Let's drink all this water, do X, Y, Z, and then I'll feel better.
It's just going to come for me later.
Yeah. And not only like do that and not feel better, but the things that I have to do still matter, whether I feel good or not. Mm-hmm. And before it felt like more of like a, oh, well, this is just what the day brought.
Yeah, it is what it is. I think for a long time, I really didn't understand. For years and years, I did not understand how unhealthy it was to shove stuff down and tuck it away. And then life gets harder. Life throws things at you. And like, I think both of us have found ourselves in situations where it gets to the point where it's like the only way to tuck it away is to numb it somehow in an unhealthy fashion. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of ways that people can numb their feelings and their emotions.
And I don't know about for you, but so I will say one thing that I think brought this topic about for us too was we both went through breakups at similar times. So we were going out having fun as friends would do. But for me, like during that time, I didn't want people to be like, oh my God, are you okay?
Yep.
And that's natural for people to do. And so instead of just, dealing with the emotions then and being like, yeah, it's not great, but it's what I needed to do, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And I truly in the moment didn't feel like I was overcompensating, but I was. I just didn't want to be, I viewed it as if I wasn't like the utmost happy, that I would be like viewed as negative. And I always want to be a positive person, and that's simply not true. Like if you're feeling something because you're going through something difficult, that's okay. I mean, obviously there's a time that, you don't want to be upset forever and be a downer, but I think there's a line between that.
I think the first podcast that Tori and I did, something that I said was like giving yourself room to mourn and process before you move on. And that can be very difficult to do. Also, do you think that maybe part of us, our way of handling that stuff is a pride thing? Like, I'm too proud to be sad.
No, 100%. Like, I wanted to be like, oh, it's fine. Like, this is the best thing, blah, blah, blah. My life's great. And I think that it just, I just was like, no, it's great. It's fine. I didn't want to feel like, oh, this horrible thing happened, or like, and it wasn't a horrible thing. It's what needed to happen, but it still was emotional.
Yeah. And it can be a positive thing and a positive change. And that was like,
it'd still be hard.
It'd still be hard. It'd still be sad. And I think that when we were in that time period, we did feel a lot of relief. And there was a lot of like, this is a positive change. Like, this is a good thing. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, there were some deeper, darker emotions that went along with stuff we had experienced or were experiencing that we didn't want to process and didn't want to deal with. And I think maybe coping with that in a certain way for the wrong reasons. Like, I know for me, I definitely have like a high capacity to be able to like go out and drink. Mm. I could take it very far and show up to work first thing the next morning and no one would know, because I'm a very hardcore person. So I can take every level of my life to like 10.
You're an all or nothing.
I am so intense with everything.
I can totally relate to that, and I find myself now, and I went through a period where I also drank a lot, did all the things, actually went to New Orleans, had so much fun, to the point that like I really didn't even process my breakup until like 2 months ago, when I came home and was like, okay, whoa, like I need to reset, slow down.
Almost a year later.
Yeah, like I really, like I was like, oh my gosh, like I miss this person, blah blah. I didn't, but I had never processed it at the time. And so it was really weird, but yeah, no, I'm definitely an all or nothing person, and I can even take that to like the other day finding out sugar is not healthy and me literally reading every gram of sugar on everything to the point that like my dad's like, okay,
a little obsessive.
Yeah, like, but it's just like, I'm like, well, if I have 1 gram, that's bad, you know? It's crazy. And so trying to find that balance of, you know, it is fun, go out with your girls, have drinks, but let's not go until 2 a.m. and then, you know, come home and talk until 3, whatever, because we do have obligations the next day.
Well, I think also the motivation behind those decisions is what's really important. So like,
oh, that's a good point.
If we want to, if years from now, when we're very healthy people,
we have decided we are not going out for a very long time. So yes, it will be years from now before we ever leave a house.
Leave the living room. But years from now, when we're really healthy people and we're like, we want a girls' night, let's go to dinner, let's go out, let's have a good time. If our motivation behind that is that we genuinely want to enjoy our girlfriends and we're like, oh, we haven't been out in a long time, let's have a girls' night and arrange something really fun and girl romance each other. I think that's amazing and really healthy. But if the reason why we're going out is because we both have individual pain that we are trying to numb or tuck down or not have time by ourselves, because when you're alone, then you have to start to feel
and it's hard.
Your stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
but that's what you have to do.
When that stuff becomes toxic is because you're using it for something that's not for good.
And like to add on to that, because when I went to New Orleans, a lot of the times that, you know, I went out a lot, a lot of the times I was going out, I was trying to still have that positive, like, everything's great, everything's fun. So then like the drinking became like heavier because I was like just trying to push down those feelings, whatever I could, you know. And we've both talked about too, you can even do that, and we've both done it with work, like where I'm like, okay, I'll work till 5 a.m. and then I'll get up at 9 and I'll just keep going, and like it's almost like a high, but it's like in that moment you're not taking care of your body, you're avoiding your things, and you can't possibly be present in the moment. And so I just think that you can really push that stuff down with anything.
No, that's a good point, that it's very easy to draw the analogy with alcohol, because we all know.
Yeah, it is. It's easy because we've all been there. And so yeah, I mean, there's definitely been times that if you're going out to have fun for the right reasons, that's good. When we're going out on a Tuesday and trying to, like, going from place to place, being like, oh, this place is dead, probably because we shouldn't be out on a Tuesday. Like, let's go be normal humans. And if you're out on a Tuesday, don't feel bad about it. But
as long as you're actually
just address it later. Maybe
right
think about it. Like, maybe don't do Wednesday.
Talk to your therapist about it. But you're right. It's not like alcohol's an easy one to point out, but it can be work. We've both done it with work.
Yeah.
I'm really guilty of that, where it's like I'll just work nonstop, and if you're not giving yourself time to rest, process, make sure other areas of your life and of your psyche are taken care of, it can become a toxic thing. And it goes back to the motivation behind it. The activities I'm engaging in them, am I engaging in them because they're what I should be doing and they're good for me, or am I engaging in them because I'm covering something up that I don't want to face?
Yeah.
Ugh.
I think I actually made a note of this because, are you done with that phrase?
No, yeah,
okay.
Go on.
Another thing that I think is kind of crazy, but it's true for at least my life, is food. Because when you eat, you have a feeling after, whether it's, you know, you're full, whatever it is, you do feel better after you eat. Mm-hmm. So I notice when I wake up, I eat immediately, like before I even like am really like there. So it sounds weird, but I set a timer for 15 minutes so that like I have time to, and I probably will make a better choice because, you know, at this point I've gone pee, walked around, whatever, but it's just better than, oh, this is the first thing I see. And it's usually something random. It could be chips. It could be just something that you don't have for breakfast. I do have that weird ability that I could eat anything for breakfast.
Same.
but like love good some leftovers.
Leftover Chinese.
But like but it's happened before, and it really hit me like the other night, like because I'll sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, I'll just have some of this snack. Like my dad's like, that's really strange. But it was just me like not even consciously acting. Like those are.
It wasn't intentional choices you were
making. And I think that's what is important. Like I don't know. I think that was just, whether it was me waking up not wanting to feel things, I don't know, but.
No, I like that. Like in every area of life.
Yeah.
And which is really the overarching, hopefully, goal of this podcast is to help us. Like it's supposed to. I want the podcast to be very raw and very real, because I think it's important to talk about this real stuff, because it encourages us to live intentionally and hopefully help other people also live intentionally, instead of making decisions throughout their day. It's kind of like, okay, wherever the wind takes us, or whatever my gut reaction is, really thinking about it and questioning why you're making certain choices, or if it's the right choice to be making for you. Now, like, let's talk a little bit about you. If you realize you've been tucking something down, ignoring some emotions or pretending they don't exist, then what?
Do we realize, so are you, in this hypothetical, are we realizing it because okay, I'll just say this. I know for me, if I do tuck something down, it can come up very ugly, because I have put it down for so long that by the time it comes up, it's maybe even more of a, oh my gosh, like catastrophe.
It's been festering
thing. Yeah, because I've put it down, but it's not going anywhere. It's still a thing. And then it does, I will say this, truly, like reality, if I would have processed the relationship at the time, I probably would have had a listening ear, which I didn't want. Again, remember, I was like, I don't need that because I'm all tough. But then when you're like processing it like 8 to 10 to like a year later, like it's kind of like, what are you going to do? Reach out? I mean, obviously I have great friends, but
I'm here to talk about
year-old breakup. But I mean, it comes up at like an odd time. It's really a lot more, and it's, I don't know, it feels like all the emotions are coming up much stronger because they've been suppressed for so long.
They got to sit and rot for a while before you pulled them up.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's at that point, like, for me, like, I think the only way to deal with it is just go through it. And in that moment, think about, like, what you've done in the past that didn't allow you to go through it earlier, and just change that moving forward.
And cut out these things that we're using as tools to numb ourselves. Honestly, I think therapy has been a huge.
That's a good point.
I know I know for me, I don't know if I could be where I'm at mentally, emotionally without a really good therapist, a good one.
I would certainly not be sitting here. I actually thought of that this morning, because
still be in New Orleans.
I would have gone out, or I would have gone out last night. Even if I was in Richmond, I would have gone out last night. I wouldn't have woken up to do a podcast and talk about feelings. I would have been like, Katerina, I don't have feelings. What are you talking about?
We wouldn't be texting at 7 a.m. because you'd be asleep.
Exactly, and that's like, yeah, like it totally was different for us, but I wouldn't wake up and go to work if I was partying. I would wake up and be like, well, what are we going to do tonight? And it can just go and go and go. So,
well, you have to keep, if you're using that way if that's what you're using to numb out, you have to keep doing it, because it doesn't last.
Yeah, that's true.
It only lasts for the moment, those hours.
Yeah.
When you're actively doing it.
And I think that goes for anything that you do. And I've been thinking about this hard lately, because even you can use sex, you can use people as like a feeling, as a feel 100%.
Good.
And you don't feel good after. You feel guilty because you naturally...
You know that the reason you were there was not the reason you should have been there.
It wasn't there because, like, in this time that I went through this, it was not because I wanted to grow a healthy relationship or whatever. And I was just using people, using myself just to get out of that moment, just to feel good for a moment, but it doesn't last. And if you are trying to push something down, you will run to the next thing, whatever that is.
No, I think, and I really needed to be able to talk through and process my stuff in therapy to realize the real reason why these decisions were happening, or like the way I might have been treating men, and how it was actually a power dynamic for me, and it was a way for me to get back power that I felt like I had lost. And I remember I'm in virtual therapy, as I think most people are right now.
Yeah, me too, and it's the best thing ever.
It's amazing. But I've known my therapist, I saw my therapist as a marriage counselor.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That it's the same woman who I took Tyler to see before we got married, which the power in that is that she has been around for everything.
Yeah.
For all things, which is really good.
Yeah.
But I think I remember the therapy session where I came to the realization of like a lot of the motivation behind what I had been doing. And it was like, oh, it made me want to puke. Like it made me want to, I felt sick. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. This is so unhealthy. But then also, like, it hurts to have this type of knowledge about yourself. But then once you discover it, I think it gives you the right kind of power back, because once you know what you're doing, it kind of starts to empower you to be like, I can be a little stronger and make better decisions because now I understand the motivation.
Yeah, because I think on that too. So I also see a therapist, love her, would not be where I am today without her. And you're still going to desire those things.
Yep.
That's the thing.
That doesn't just disappear.
Yeah. Whether it's like speaking on to like anxiety, depression, ADHD, all the things that you're going to live with that forever. But realizing like, okay, yes, I think most people like sex, like you're still going to want that, but is it with the right person? Is it a right time?
For the right reason. For
the right reason. Yeah. Is it a healthy choice? Because you are going to feel good in the moment, no matter what, but is it what you really need for, tomorrow, the hour after, the next month? And just trying to think of that ahead of time has helped me a lot. And for me, I have to do that with drinking because I have decided not to drink for now. And so, certain environments, even last night, I was like, oh, I'm in Richmond. I could have fun. Like, it'll be great. And it like took me a full shower to be like, okay, no, because, you have XYZ tomorrow. You're not going to go have, one drink. For me, I would have gone out and it was never enough too for certain things.
It can never.
Because it was like, oh, well, the bar's closed, but we can go back to so-and-so's house and we can do this and we can do that. And it wasn't like even really fun. For me, it got to not be fun because I was pushing down emotions.
No, I can remember it being like 3 or 4 in the morning and it's already not fun. Like you've been having fun, and then like hours into it, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this is not.
And sometimes that does happen.
I gotta leave.
Yeah, and you're like, what am I doing?
Oh, what it like hit like you were having fun, and then at some point you're like, oh shoot, some of these decisions that I've made, or like how far I've taken this, and now it's 4 in the morning. Like I gotta go home.
And you resent like that person, you resent like almost
whoever
like,
you're with.
Yeah, it's just like, and it's just not healthy, I don't think. And
it's so
but
bad.
I feel really lucky that I've been opened to that, because I've pretty much done this for 6 years, where I'm like, it started when my best friend passed tragically, and I was hours away at college, and I was like, well, I don't want people to be like asking me if I'm okay. I'm fine, of course. Mm-hmm. And so I just had this mentality that, I'm tougher than that. I'm here to tell you, you're not tougher than your feelings.
Speaking of like denying trauma.
Yeah, we were talking about that this morning. They're definitely gonna come up. And so just knowing how to deal with them at the time, I think is really hard to learn. Really hard to go through. It's not as fun as going out to have a drink, but you feel a lot better after. At least for me, I do.
And even if like drinking and partying is not a coping mechanism for you, because some people that really doesn't help.
Yeah.
They don't like it.
Right.
But whether it's that or it's something else, I think what we learn over time is that not dealing with the ugly emotions when they come up later, it's coming for you. It is,
and like I was saying, it's worse. It feels worse.
It is.
It comes up. It's very scary, and you're like, "What's happening?"
What's gonna happen is it's gonna be totally out of your control. Like,
yep.
Some things are going to happen that all of a sudden it is not an option anymore. You have to deal with it, because now it's even like maybe for some people it's a horrible panic attack, or a total meltdown, or it starts affecting their relationships, and like they start being shitty to people who they really care about. Like, there's a lot of ways that it can come out sideways, and then it starts to be like, oh my gosh, now I have to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
When it could have just been dealt with before it started to have such negative consequences. And I'll just state what might be obvious to some people and less obvious to others, but I got pregnant at the beginning of this year, unintentionally, and like, you have to chill out, and you have to process things when something like that happens, because life suddenly looks really different.
We couldn't go out anymore, like physically.
Immediately could not.
Yeah, and
could not drink.
I remember the first time we went out and Kat didn't get a drink, and I was like, actually, there was 2 times. The first time I didn't know, the second time I knew later, and I was like, yeah, I didn't.
Betsy knew something was wrong with me
the second, but
yeah, immediately.
I was like,
are you okay? No.
But I didn't know until a little bit later, and she's like, do you remember that? And I'm like, oh my god, no.
I needed a couple days. So I think I had been in therapy and was trying to figure my stuff out, was trying to just trying to get a handle on things, and had that month was like really tough and really fun, but really tough. And then I found out I was pregnant, and immediately it was like, I have to process this stuff better and now. And you can't numb it. You can't cover it up. You have to buckle down and deal with reality all of a sudden. And honestly, it was like probably a very healthy thing.
It kind of do you feel like it kind of saved you in a way?
I do.
Because it required you to sit down and be like, okay, let's get...
It's so the people who are like the very closest to me, like my like this person, I think have seen that over time, and it's something that came as a realization that was like, I would not have chosen to get pregnant. That was not part of the plan. I really thought I was done. I had donated all my baby stuff. I didn't own one baby thing.
I remember that. With a month earlier, and I was like, oh.
It was all gone. It wasn't an intentional choice I would have made, but
it was because of a choice that you made, not unconsciously, being you were there, but
I was making decisions that put me in a situation where sometimes this thing happens. Right. This is what happens sometimes. And ultimately, in a way, I think you look back on something hard like that where you're like, oh gosh, what am I gonna do? And like, I think definitely I've realized that in many ways this pregnancy saved me from myself and forced me to come to terms with so many things, and also, like, I don't know, pulled me into a healthier place, and will continue to do so. Like, life is gonna stay hard, and there's a lot of mental, emotional work that needs to be done.
That's what I was gonna. Can I add on that?
Yeah.
So what I would say about that, and something. So I'm going through not drinking anymore, like I discussed, and I work with my therapist really closely. But something that you just kind of hit on is learning the tools, because you will be having the baby, and of course things are going to be busy, chaotic, but you could then choose, well, the nights that, you know, you get a babysitter, whatever, oh, I'm going to go out and make those same things. But because you're in therapy, learning the tools of, okay, when I feel like that, you know, going through the, like, is it for this reason? Is it for that reason? You know, do I really want to go out tonight, or do I want to like get rest because it's the only night that I can, whatever it is. And that's the same for me with not drinking. It's not just, I'm not drinking anymore. It's why I'm not drinking anymore. And it's recognizing why I was drinking before, because I've had times in my life where I'm like, oh, we're just not going to drink. Like, you know, cool, I'll be healthier. It's just, but I had no clue I was doing it. And so talking with my therapist, learning that, you know, why I was doing it and just kind of changing that behavior. I think that tool, like I always call it like a toolbox, and I'm just adding tools to my toolbox. And I think that's important. And I think that that is something that therapy helps with, and that just, I don't know, I guess I would encourage people to explore, because if you don't have the skill set to handle these things, and I don't think that it comes natural to a lot of people.
No.
I think that some people it might, but if you don't have the skill set to handle these things and you don't practice it actively, then you're going to revert to that kind of behavior. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay. But I think every time you do it, being able to recognize, like, okay, you know, I feel this way because I did this and that, and here's how I can not do that again. So that's kind of like what I'm just practicing and learning.
No, 100%. And because of, once you're put in a situation where you're like, okay, these coping mechanisms that are unhealthy, they are off the table, then you do need those tools, because you do have to cope and process in some way. I mean, like the other night, I had to take my dog to the hospital. She's okay now, but she was dying. And it was really upsetting and horrible. And honestly, like that brought up a lot of really upsetting emotions and feelings. And it's not an option to have a drink, to go down a bottle of wine,
Right.
like to drop her off and then go like cover it up or cover it up with bad company or whatever it is. And what I ended up doing is pulling out, I bought this notebook a few weeks ago, because I was like, this is a way that I used to process things in a more healthy manner, and like took out this notebook and just wrote down a lot of what I was feeling, and a letter to the stupid dog, and
Lola, get your shit together.
Dear
It's
Lola,
not the time.
I love you so much. So, but it needed it. You can't, if you don't understand what helps you process, then you don't even have those tools. And I needed that. I needed to be able to do that.
And I think what I'm learning with that too is try it, because you can hear these things, and I've heard these things before, you know, people say, like, just hearing you say that now, in the moment when you're worked up and emotional, your natural, if you have the option, Katarina doesn't right now, she has a baby in her, but I think, you know, your natural reaction is to go to whatever vice or whatever, if you do deal with emotions unhealthy, it's your natural reaction to go to that. For me, it's easier to do that. It's easier to just get a drink. It's easier to go out, like, you know, put my clothes on, get dressed up. Like, that's fun. But it's actually harder to pull out the notebook and write the things down and cry and do whatever you do, read it back. But afterwards, you're going to feel refreshed and be better to handle that. Go back to the vets the next morning. And I think, too, like, adding on that is having people in your life that are kind of like a safe space. Because I texted you, ironically, the next morning. I didn't know that Lola was in the hospital, but, you know, I asked how you were, and you said very pregnant and very sad, which I loved, because it was very how you felt. You didn't say like, oh, I'm doing great, you know, Thanksgiving, blah, blah, yeah, or hanging in there, whatever. You were just very like, this is how I feel, which then was good for me, because I was like, okay, here's how I can be a better friend. Here's what I can do. Rather than, oh, Kat's fine, things are going good,
everything's fine.
Yeah, and so having those people that you can be raw and honest with, and you know, help each other how you can, I think that's important too.
Wow, what a very important point. Finding people you can be truly vulnerable with, and which is something I am naturally very bad at, being
Me
vulnerable.
too, and that's why I think I recognized it as Well, you know, she really must feel that way, and I'm glad she said that.
And I've been trying to, for a while now, I work on it bit by bit, but my inner circle people, my closest people, trying to be very real with them and share the crappy stuff and share the crappy feelings. And like honestly, like even just writing it on paper that night when I had like taken Lil to the hospital, it was hard for me to write it down. Like that's how much like I don't want to say it or recognize it. I don't even want to write it.
Yeah.
And no one's gonna read that. It's just me, and I know that I feel that way, but I didn't want to do that. It hurt to do it. It like for some reason it like hurts your pride because you're upset, and like admitting that you're upset and why you're upset and like what you're feeling is so hard. But I think finding people you can be really vulnerable with and be honest about how you're feeling. And, you know, if you think you have someone like that and then you learn that that's not that person, then don't be vulnerable with that person.
Yeah, there are certain people that you just, you know, and that's fine. You protect yourself. And
like, most people, honestly, you probably can't be that honest with.
But I think it's good that you've at least realized that, you know, okay, well, what I'm going to do is handle this by myself, but I am going to write it all down, you know, do whatever you do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on that because my go-to thing is, whether it's good, bad, ugly, I want to like report to someone about my day. Like, oh my God, I did X, Y, Z, blah, blah. And truthfully, like, I might not even care because it's not Katarina. Like, it's not like, it's like might be someone I'm not even that close with. So truthfully, like, I might not even care what that person's thinking. I just feel like I have to get it out there. So I was thinking, I'm like, why don't I just write it like in my notes on my phone, text it to myself, or get out a piece of paper and do it.
Write it down.
Which my therapist really encourages, pen and paper. Sometimes I do it. Sometimes
there's something very cathartic about it.
Yeah.
Pen and paper.
Yeah. I do it with more so lists and work stuff, but I need to she tells me all the time, she's like, you need to write this on paper. So I definitely think that's the thing. I wrote a couple of things on my phone. I don't know if they're...
yes. Please share.
Let's see. Okay. Oh, this is a good one. This is actually like a tool. Put this in your toolbox. But we can't always be prepared for news we can't be prepared for every situation, period. Nope. We just can't. So that's why like working on your natural base and, you know, preparing to handle things as they come is important. But my therapist was saying, and I actually used to do this, you can take yourself on a mental vacation. So for her, she was saying, you know, obviously she talks to people all day. She takes in a lot of information. Sometimes she's like, you know, if I'm taking in something really hard, and I don't know what that means, maybe, you know, a client who's going through something hard, whatever, she'll kind of go on a little mental vacation, picture herself by the water, you know, hear all the waves, and then process that when she has been able to kind of digest it. For me, I used to have panic attacks. I don't know why, but after lunch, I can't remember what year in high school, I don't know what it was. My body would just have this panic attack. So I would literally take myself out of that room. I would be in my grandma's house because no matter what, I knew my grandma was never judging me. And I knew that I was safe there and it would get me through that moment. So I just think surviving the moment, and then when you're to a place where you can, you know, cry, whatever it is, that's okay too. Like, I think that was a tool that, I don't know, that helped me.
I like that. What else?
Let's see. Oh, this one's a good one. Okay. So, this one came from my therapist too, but our blood cells are naturally circles. And if you've ever gone from 0 to 80, I'm working on that because I have a tendency to react, and it might not be a good reaction. When we go 0 to 80, our blood cells change into like ovals, and they're just trying to keep moving. They're just trying to like keep you regulated. It takes 3 hours for them to go back to normal. So my therapist always says, she's like, I'm not letting them mess with my red blood cells. But I just think it's interesting because when you do get that worked up and stuff, that's just something I'm working on.
And maybe recognizing that it takes that time for your body to recover from it. So it's
Yeah,
like, it's
that
okay
too.
that 30 minutes later I'm not all right.
That, and so for me, like, if I get a text that I'm like, you know, oh my God, wasn't expecting, instead of responding right then, I'm like, okay, let's set the 3-hour timer. Like, let's set the timer and go back to it later, because I'm reacting right now. And you might still have a reaction 3 hours later, but you've given your body time and you're not putting yourself through that, like, whoa, you know, just crazy. And some people have that, some people don't. You're very, to me, calm. I'm a little bit more reactionary.
I feel like I had to learn that a little bit for work.
Oh, that's a good one.
Now I've been applying it more personally, because for work, I've realized over time, you get better at your job in our line of work, that's very high stress. And you start to realize, you know, like, sometimes me and the other person in this negotiation needs a minute in order for this to be more productive. So you give it a few hours. And I don't know why it's taken me so long to apply it personally. Like, sometimes if there's a hard conversation or someone sends a text message that's like a little triggering, you don't have to respond to it right this second.
I would say too, with work, it's able to be, you can take it less personally. So when it comes to your personal life, it's natural that it's harder to implement. And then the only other thing, this is just a quote, but that never stuck with me before, but it was from a Ryan Serhant book, and he was saying everything he does is for future Ryan.
Ooh,
and
I love that.
I read that 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. It was 2 years ago. And I was like, oh, that's great. But I didn't know how to apply it. And now I feel like
you're applying it.
That's how I'm living. Like, today might not be fun because I have to do X, Y, Z, pay these bills, whatever. And I used to take that as like, oh, life is so hard. And now I'm like, everybody has to do it. Do it. And then tomorrow will be a better day. So I don't know. I love that.
I love that. For future, the things that I'm doing, are they for the future version of myself? Am I going to be glad tomorrow that I did this thing?
Yeah. And I just think it's helpful too, because a lot of the stuff I was doing was choices like in the moment.
Right now.
Yeah. Like, I want to feel good right now. So I'm going to go out with my girlfriends, have fun, whatever it is. And that wasn't helping the future me. So.
Right. Whether that's in 3 hours or tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah.
No, 100%. We got to deal with our stuff. One of the quotes that I kind of opened with on the first episode was, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. So, you know, doing things for that future version of ourselves, for the person who's going to wake up in 10 years and have to live with the last decade that you created.
Yeah.
Ooh, and that's something I've said a lot this year. It's like, really in the last couple of years, like, I'm trying to make decisions I can live with in the long term.
And like you said, it's hard to make those decisions. It was hard for both of us to make those decisions. But
when you make the right decisions for the long term, then you're unburdened by them.
Yep.
Like, I don't...
Just make sure you process them well.
Yeah, process.
That's what we're here to tell you.
Process. Get a good therapist, dang it.
Prepare yourself. If you're going to make a big decision, you will have feelings about it.
Get you a good therapist.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it goes without saying. I mean, I wouldn't be here without my therapist. But the only way I describe to other people, too, is like a therapist is literally a third person. They're not your friend. They're not in your life. They don't know people in your life. And so it's like,
they're observing in a different way.
Exactly. They are literally hearing the words coming out of your mouth for what they are. They're not applying what they feel on it. And so they're able to say, well, here's why that is. And then you're like, oh, wow. And you almost like, sometimes I'm almost like, how did I not realize that? But it's because you yourself are applying all the feelings, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And
we have biases because we're in it.
Yeah.
100%. And I'd say a great therapist, learning to process, learning to deal with stuff, making decisions that are intentional, that we can live with long term. I can genuinely say, and I mean this, that I regret nothing. I mean it.
I have a keychain that says that. I'm going to have to bring it to you. I just
no regrets.
I thought, I was like, I can't put this on my keychain. I'm like, I regret nothing. That's a little bold.
I regret nothing. Can I have that? I genuinely feel that way. Because I think I've gotten to a place where I've taken the cards that I was dealt and created something out of it that is really beautiful. Very hard, very challenging. Life is very difficult, but I don't regret the things that I have and I've ended up with, and the lessons that I've learned, and so I'm able to live without shame. And that's why we can sit here and talk about these things.
Yeah.
Because we don't need to feel shame over the past or decisions that we've made or things that have happened. That is not the point of those things.
And to add on that, like, don't be afraid if you're in a spot of growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to make, for me, like, I took a step into a different career, made the choice to move from New Orleans back to home. And it's easy to feel like I'm not where this person is, or I'm not where I thought I was, or whatever. You will know if you are doing the right thing for you, even if you don't feel it that day, that week, that month. You will know, and you will feel proud when you continue to just do the thing that you need to do. Because I don't feel any shame where I'm at right now. I feel like, and the people who are close to me too know, like, you're in such a better spot because you're doing X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. And that's going to look different for everyone. So don't ever think, oh, I don't have this, or, oh, I'm working. I talked to someone the other day who was like, what are people going to think if I'm finishing this now? And I'm like, well, if they don't, if someone else doesn't think that's great, they're not your people. Like, your people are the people who know that you're doing the best thing for yourself if you're truly doing that.
Right. For your own personal journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is no shame in that.
Yeah.
For your journey to look the way it needs to look. Wow. Any other thoughts, Betsy?
I don't think so. I think that's everything.
Thank you so much. And I've said this about Tori before. Excuse me. I know we've only been a couple episodes into this podcast, but Betsy's another one of those people that is very much my inner circle. We're, I think, very real with each other and have been through some things together. And I mean, she came over this morning before we were on the podcast. We were talking about trauma and all of that. Yeah. So,
and I was sitting there saying, Kat, I've just never had trauma, blah, blah. But that was me.
Yeah, the way that we go, no, I haven't had trauma. Nothing bad has happened to me.
Yeah, and it's just my natural, like, no, I'm not.
I'm fine.
Because I'm so proud. Like, I'm like, no, I'm
Why
fine.
we need a therapist to be like, friend.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. Yes, it is.
And I think that's too, like, everything we're talking about is all in practice.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much, Betsy. I really appreciate you coming and sitting with me, and
I'm happy to be here. This was of all the things I could have helped with, this is fun.
This was much more fun than like running an errand or
I would still do that, but
yeah, Betsy's a sweet friend, and when she came last time, I was a little sicker than this.
Yeah.
She was like cleaning up my kitchen and doing things that very sweet people do. But this is the most fun, and I really appreciate sitting down with someone who is open to being vulnerable and real, and it's a skill that I've tried to get better and better at, and hopefully will continue to improve on over time. And having a friend who I feel like I can be vulnerable with is so valuable to me, so thank you for that.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for listening, if you listened, and I appreciate the feedback once again, and I feel like I have the best people around me, even the people I don't see all the time, who like listen to this and have thoughtful remarks or feedback, or if there's anything that you want to share or feel like is a mark that was missed here, like tell me, I'll talk about it on the next one. So thank you. This was episode 3 of A Curated Life, and if you listen, we appreciate you.